me just start by saying I can't wait to dive into this episode. Fruits Basket constantly delivers, but this episode really was exceptional. And there was so much jam-packed into 20 minutes that it's amazing how seamlessly it flowed. Before I get started, I just have my usual disclaimer to let you know that I have read the manga and I'm aware of future plot points and details. But for the sake of these reviews, I like to focus solely based on the anime plot rather than jumping back and forth between manga and anime. It just makes it more streamlined and allows anime onlys to join in too. Now with that being said, let's get started. So straight off the bat, we have a pretty ominous scene with Akito holding a black box where she questions if Kureno knows about it. He answers no, and Akito makes fun of him for not knowing, as if he's stupid. So we're back to seeing regular old Akito again. And to be honest, it's kind of infuriating in a way to see her behave like this, especially now since we know she can actually be vulnerable and is a victim in her own way. You kind of want her to be better, and yet she's still the same. It's clever writing, but it's still really unnerving and upsetting. She reveals to Kureno that her father's within the box, which leads to the assumption that he's being cremated and his ashes are in the box. Either that, or there's something sentimental from her father in the box at least. Having this type of scene at the beginning of the episode is pretty clear foreshadowing, to say the least, and I'm pretty sure we'll find out more about the box soon and why it's so special. Then, to completely offset that unsettling scene, we have the most adorable and sweet scene with a grown-up hero and baby Hinata. And of course, by grown-up I mean that he's grown up significantly, but he's still an early teen. In any case, it's quite clear that some time's passed since the previous episode. You hear from his mum that he's taken being a big brother in his stride, and you can't help but feel happy as you see him bond with her. But before you can get comfortable, it all comes crashing down as Reen's brought up by another adult, and you can see Hiro beginning to feel concerned. It seems that rumours have been circling around pretty quickly that something's wrong with Reen, and you can't help but feel for Hiro here. It must be hard being the only Zodiac member to have seen Reen be attacked by Akito in such a cruel way, especially considering how young he was at the time. It's clear that anytime he hears about her, he gets put completely on edge, and he can't help but feel helpless and worried. Leading off from this scene, we get to see Haru and Yuki continue on the subject of Reen, and we have a hilarious moment where Haru's so proud that Reen's finally made a friend in Toru. He's honestly one of the best characters, and he's so unique in his personality and quirkiness that he always makes me laugh when he's on screen. And it's interesting to me that initially he doesn't seem that concerned about Reen. I mean, he obviously cares for her, but to him it doesn't seem weird that she's missing. At least he's not worried like he was when she was initially in hospital. So much so that he even comments on it himself. At the very least, it seems that Yuki's conversation with him spurs him on, and he's going to investigate this more. Then we head back to the Soma estate and we see Kisa and Hiro together. And we have the glory of seeing them both so grown up. Even their voices have matured a little bit, and it's great to see. I thought it was also really sweet that Kisa was immediately heading to visit Hiro straight after school. I really like these two, and I love it when we get more of their stories, so this whole scene was a big plus for me. And to top it off, we get some serious growth on Hiro's part. Having a baby sister's opened his eyes to how self-absorbed and selfish he can be, and how much he wants to grow as a person to protect her and other people he cares for, like Kisa. Of course, in classic fashion though, his moment of self-reflection and wanting to be a better person is completely ruined by running into Haru, and he switches back to the angry and blunt personality just out of habit. And I think it's funny how Haru immediately notices their growth in a super passive way before just immediately leaving. Then we get this cool back and forth scene with Hiro explaining to Haru that he felt bad about yelling at him at the school festival, and that he saw Akito attack Reen, and that he knew it was because of Haru and Reen's relationship, but he was forced not to tell anyone, and that he'd been racked with immense guilt over what had happened. And this is paired with Kureno watching a Soma maid take food far away from the main estate, all the way to the cat house. And it's pretty sad as it's all but confirmed that Reen's been locked away in the cat house this whole time. And with all this manipulation to hide all these acts, all the way down to the maid and her family, it's really just disturbing. It all escalates from here, and we see Hiro not only tell Kisa that his actions were the reason that she was attacked by Akito, but also apologise to Haru for trying to keep this information from him and accepting the fact that he could be mad. Then he just full on opens the lid, telling him that Reen's trying to break the curse to free him and herself from Akito's hold, and Haru finally learns why she left him. To protect him. It's a really weird moment in a way, as it's the first time we've really heard the younger Zodiacs mention attempting to break the curse. It feels kind of taboo in a way. But it's a great scene, and it really goes to show how ingrained it can be even to the audience that the Zodiacs are a complex and feared system. And we also see Kureno ask for the key to the house, fully ready to accept all responsibility and blame so he can free her, with the maid obliging, fearing for Reen as well. Haru just puts a hand on Hiro, trying to reassure him in his own way before leaving without a word. And then Kisa just breaks down, feeling sorry for Hiro bearing all these burdens and feeling guilty herself for not knowing what he was going through. And this is such a Toru moment. It's clear that her and Kisa are so similar, and she's having such an impact on her as an older sister figure. They both reassure one another, and it's all very sweet and good to get all of that aired out. In all honesty though, I'd kind of forgotten about that whole issue, and I wasn't really expecting it all to be resolved in this episode. And that was a great treat. We see Kureno find strands of hair on the ground, and Haru marches off in the most dark Haru way possible. He immediately finds Akito and he's ready to confront her about Rin before a maid comes running in ready to apprehend him. And honestly, it was so glorious seeing him call the nasty old maid a hag. She really is, and I'm so glad someone finally told her off because honestly, I hate her so much. Then we get the true glory of Haru not only tearing into Akito, but doing it in the most satisfying way possible. He's mostly level-headed in his questions, yet demanding and serious in tone. Then when she finally takes him seriously, she tries to act like a detective and twist his thinking, but he refuses to play her games. Rather, he tells her to stop pretending that she's naive and she knows full well that they were in love. She attempts the innocence game and he tears her down again, throwing out straight facts about her hatred of Rin and the other Zodiac girls. And honestly, the only time she even gets a slight upper hand on him in the conversation is when she mentions how telling her this could hurt Rin even more. And they continue to argue until out of the blue comes Kureno, who sent Rin to the hospital with Hattori. And on top of that, he comes through with this epic Chad energy, full on blaming Akito in the most calm and well put together way possible, scolding her like she's a child in front of Haru. It's an odd shift in their dynamic to say the least, but it's so interesting at the same time. Kureno then tells Haru that she was being held in the cat's house, the house meant for the cruelest punishment by God, which clearly sets Haru off. Meanwhile, Akito's having a sulk like a child, and Kureno's pandering to her cries but being firm as if she's literally his daughter that he's telling off, and it's kind of creepy considering their dynamic. But, of course, it doesn't last long because then Haru just snaps. And not only tells her off for her treatment to Rin, but to Kureno as well, and full on confronts her for all her awful behaviour and is ready to punch her brutally. Before this happens though, he flashes back to himself and Rin, where he admits that he cared more about having Rin to himself than protecting her from Akito. It's really sad and sweet at the same time, and you can't help but just want the best for these guys. Rin especially has such a sweet-natured voice when she's just being herself, not the tormented, walls-up personality that she's had since she was attacked by Akito, and it's really, really sad. And on top of all that, you can see that Haru actually blames himself, regardless of it actually being Akito that attacked Rin, feeling that he was selfish for wanting Rin and putting her in danger. So once again, we see that classic Zodiac guilt coming back to bite him. It's then revealed that in the end, he didn't punch Akito, but split the wood behind her, and he just ups and leaves, all miserable with himself. Before he leaves though, you can see that Akito is genuinely fearful that he's going to leave her, and she calls out to him, but he's still so cold, and it's incredibly satisfying. And then we get this epic moment where we hear Akito continue to call for him, and he remembers them young together, with Akito calling for him even then. He goes to turn back, and the Bond calls to him before Kureno stops him in his tracks and tells him to leave and be with Rin. He then remembers Rin calling for him, and he goes to her instead. And then we see his bond with Akito physically fray, and my god, chills. And this is just another Chad move by Kureno. And then Akito of course has a tantrum just like in her episode with Shigure, where she struggles with the belief that the Zodiac's meant for her, and that she genuinely wants them to love her and doesn't understand why they resist her so much. Realistically, she's probably super fearful that her mum's right. And I think it's fair to say that her dad had different reasoning, which is most likely why she's been referencing him all the time and calling him out this episode. We then see Hattori going to visit Rin in the hospital, where once again, she's gone. And I'm sorry, but I couldn't help but find this moment funny. Someone needs to get this girl off the ground floor of the hospital. How many times has she escaped through the window? In any case, we're soon back at the Somas, and the maid lays it on Kureno hard, fully believing that the Zodiac members need to bend to Akito's every whim, regardless of their own wishes for life, and that they deserve to die if that's what Akito wants. It's full on crazy and really insensitive. And honestly, I have no idea how he stays so calm all the time. We then flash back to when Rin's treading through the main Soma estate, and honestly, it's really funny that the initial reason she's there is to confront Kureno for making Toru cry. It's so precious that there's now literally another friend that would probably kill for Toru. And I love the little parallels to Hanajima and Uetani that she's got going on. Of course, she's then found by Ren, and we learn that she's asked to rob Akito for something that Ren believes is hers, the box that we see in the beginning of the episode, in exchange for the solution to break the curse. The scene where she goes to find it is honestly great. We have a nice little moment where she enters the room and remembers the defeated Yuki who used to be huddled in the corner, and it's such a great touch. The anime does these little moments so well, and I really enjoy it. Akito of course catches her, and my god, you couldn't help but feel a little sorry for her, even though it's a flashback. Again, this was a great scene because for a moment, you feel that she can finally free Haru, and then Akito's hand comes into frame, and you see the Zodiac bond literally encircle the two of them like she's trapped. It's just so cool. And it gets pretty sad on how immediately defeated she gets when she sees Akito again, recalling her loveless parents and how Akito makes her feel the same way. Back in the present, she collapses in the street after escaping the hospital just like she did back when she was a child. And then it just gets worse, and Ren feels no sympathy for what happened to Rin from the mission, admitting that she doesn't even know how to break the curse despite her promise. And on top of it all, she irrationally hates her for some reason, even though she was a child. And this just makes you feel even worse for Reen. How was she not loved? Why does everybody hate her? It's kind of awful. And then we get this fake out where it seems that Reen's dreamt all this up and that she's back in the cat house. And that all she wishes for is to dream of Haru before she dies. She sees Haru and tells him how sad she is that she failed to find out how to break the curse and set him free, and he reassures her and tells her to come back to him, otherwise he'll miss her. After waking her up from what she believed was a dream, he immediately picks her up and carries her and tells her that she's not a burden and that he'll always be there for her. And it's really wholesome, and you can't help but be happy for them both, and the two little girls watching just make it so much better. And that brings us to the ending, and honestly, this was the best episode of the season so far, and I'd argue it's one of the best episodes of the series to date. The show always sets such a high bar, but this was brilliant on so many levels, and I loved it so much. That being said, those are just my thoughts, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you guys think of the episode? Like it? Hate it? Make sure to leave a comment, and let me know.